Joining me today over a coffee at the Office Cafe in Brussels, Paulo Rangel, EPP Vice Chair. We talk about Eurozone, migration and the rising populist threat. Paulo Rangel, thanks so much for joining us today. The Eurozone, not least, is going through a huge change right now. What's your expectation?
Well, I have a very positive expectation. I think that we were in a kind of a stalemate, an impasse that was created by the euro crisis or the sovereign debt crisis that created a kind of distrust among the different member states of the Eurozone. And as Chancellor Merkel has pointed yesterday, so it's clear that as Greece is overcoming the crisis and is in the final stage of the program, this is really, I'd say, proper occasion to reform the Eurozone and especially to create a new atmosphere of trust, because the different countries, including Greece, that was the most difficult case, they really showed that they are available to participate in the Eurozone. So we should deepen now, and especially to create some instruments, some tools that can prevent another crisis.
And migration, your group, the EPP, has been accused by some of moving further to the right than is prudent and not really being consistent with European values on migration.
I fully disagree with that. If you tell me that among EPP group you have this kind of I think there is a split or there is a division or there are two main, I'd say, opinions or movements of opinion. They are not still, I'd say, completed, so we have no, we can say that one field or the other field has won this battle. But you have really the Orban attitude that would be probably the more extreme. And then you have a lot of countries like Portugal, like Spain, even like France, Ireland, Germany, especially the CSU is a bit different, that they are totally in line with the values of, I'd say, with Merkel's position. That I feel that is really the most sensitive response to this issue, because this is only demagogy. You can't stop the wind with your hands.
Though Orban will try.
They will try, but he will not succeed.
But how much tolerance is there within the EPP for Orban, or is it simply a matter of maintaining votes within the European parliamentary group and also perhaps preserving the ambitions of Manfred Weber and others who would need the support of other member states to move forward in the next commission?
Well, I really don't think that this is the case. It's not the problem of votes. The idea is probably that. I think that things have been, I'd say that today we are in a situation that is more divided than it was. You see the CDA vote against Orban and so on, so among EPP. But the idea is that it is probably better to have some influence, very, very close, very near to Fidesz and Orban and other parties that have this line, not so many, but some that have. It is better to have this than to have them in a different group where they would totally defend a different position.
So you think
this was till now the reason why things are like they are. I don't know how this will evolve in the future. I think this is something that we have to...
Orban seems to take the same position, saying that we don't need to be so extreme. Yes, we have different views, but he believes that the wind is with him. The wind of change is moving his direction.
But I think this is only, as I told you, a matter of demagogy. That is the reason why I think that European leaders, and especially from EPP, from the Liberals, from the Socialists, from Greens, they should be very, very, very strong also on these migration issues, trying to say that either we control the flows and we do it in a very, I'd say, delicate manner, so that means we have to receive some but not all, we have to treat them according to humanitarian patterns and standards, or we try to block everything, and in 10 years or 20 years, we'll have an invasion. This is history. So if you have a lot of flows in the past, since Roman times till now, with much less capacity of mobility, now it is impossible to stop. You have to see that in 1900, 5% of the population was in Africa and 20% was in Europe. In 10 years, it will be the other way around. 20% will be in Africa, 5% will be in Europe. We cannot stop this movement.
And one of the propositions that's getting more traction at the moment, and this isn't just a matter of Salvini speaking, is that there should be reception centres, disembarkation centres on the African continent, and then the processing and the allocation of direction will be done there for those who will be allowed to enter into Europe. Is this something which the EPP is behind?
Well, I'd say that we should have a mixed solution. So I don't exclude, quite the contrary, that we could have some spots or camps or fields, provided that they accomplished all the humanitarian rules. What is not granted today, if you go to Greece, the humanitarian situation in the camps is really very bad. We are not aware of it's really, in some cases, is even, I'd say, is really terrible, and we are not aware of this. This is not acceptable at my stance. But then, we should keep some control on this camp. So I'd say we can have in Europe, we can have even in European countries that are not members of the European Union, we can have in Africa or in Turkey, provided that we can have some control here.
Do we end up with the same level of control that Trump has exercised in America and the scandal that's going to produce?
I must say that this is, for me, the most shocking thing, this decision of Trump.
But Europe's perfectly capable of making the same mistake.
Yes, that is the risk that we are living. That's the reason why I'm so pro-Merkel in this matter. I think she's totally right, not only in the short-term management of the crisis, but also in the medium and long run. That also should be our focus, because we cannot stop this. Sometimes I tell to my electors and also to my students at the university that demography is the only social science that is exact. So it's like maths, it's like physics. It's going to happen. So you have to prepare this. So if you don't want to do it by philosophical and I'd say humanitarian reasons, at least do it by facing the facts. So there's no walls, there's no fences that can stop the movement. Of course, we should have the medium-term solution also, and this was proposed by Merkel in her Munich speech in the EPP study days, that is a Marshall Plan for Africa. And this is something that we Europeans owe, because sometimes we are very critical of the United States, but we should not forget that especially the Western European development owes a great part of this development was made by the Marshall Plan.
And the Marshall Plan demands a huge financial undertaking as well. Matteo Renzi, when he was still running Italy, proposed something like solidarity bonds, migration bonds as well, which would help fund this. Do you see, given what's happened in terms of the discussion in the Eurozone this week, that we're moving towards a new bond type structure to pay for migration?
I'm not sure. I think here the text is not clear, so it's very ambiguous. But what I would like to say is that we have to spend more money. So this attitude of Rutte or Kurz, that is back to Cameron, the ghost of Cameron is again here, is a very wrong strategy. We have now more or less 1% of GDP budget for European Union. Imagine what we could do with 2 or 3%. That is still very little. It would be amazing what we could do. So probably we have to move forward. And when they say, I heard Mr. Rutte last week in Strasbourg, and he was saying, I want a global actor for European Union. We see that we are needed now. When you see that you have China that doesn't have this, I'd say, human rights approach. When you see that the United States are doing what they are doing, we need Canada, Australia, and European Union in the global scene to design these, or to present at least an alternative to these models. Okay, for that you need to be strong, to be present in the scene. Very well. How are you going to do it with 1% of budget?
How do you convince, let's just speak on this finally, is that next year we face the European elections. Most of the money is on a populist rise during those elections. How do you convince the European electorate that there's a better way, a more moderate way, and a long-term way to achieve results, and not just the reactionary populist approach?
What I think is that we should not imitate the populists, because the original is always better than the copy. And when you see Mr. Seehofer, or even sometimes Kurz or others, that are trying to, in a certain way, make a compromise with these ideas, this is the wrong strategy. What you have to say is that we are in the wrong path. If we are following Salvini, if we are following Kaczynski,
Salvini, Kurz,
or Dragneyer,
they're winning the elections.
but I'm not saying more or less winning, because if you look in the case of Orban, this is clear, but in the case of the others, they have 25-26% maximum. In the case of Salvini, it's only 19%. So this is not the majority of the population, not at all. So there are alternatives. But what I would like to say is that we have the capacity to win if we assume our convictions, if we assume our beliefs. And this is...
Why don't you? Why? And I'm not speaking to you personally.
I assume, but I can do nothing. I'm a humble Portuguese here in the middle of European power.
But isn't this the position that so many European politicians take? It's such a big problem, what can I do? How does the message get across to the whole of the European electorate? There's a stronger, clearer, better way for Europe to function?
Well, I think if you look at Angela Merkel's attitude or Macron's attitude, they are very clear. So what we needed is people that are so clever and so gifted, as Sebastian Kurz, as Rutte, that they are also strong in the political landscape at their scale. And now probably, as Rajoy was, and now is Pedro Sanchez and others, really to support these moderate ideas. If they do it, because they are afraid of competing with the populists. We should not be afraid of populists. We should face them. This is the main problem. When you are doing compromises with things that are unacceptable, this is the wrong strategy, because then you say we are not so different, so we prefer the original to the copy. So this is the problem, is that...
So fist on the populists.
Yes, I think that we have to be very, very clear. It's like Trump. I'm totally pro-transatlantic. I'm totally pro-American. As a Portuguese, we are very, very, very pro-Atlantic, as you can imagine, because we are really in the periphery of Europe and with a, let's say, an Atlantic stance. But I have to condemn Donald Trump's policies. I can't be silent. I have to say this is wrong. That doesn't mean that I don't like, quite the contrary, the American, and we should be constructive in the dialogue, even with him. But we have to be very firm, saying we cannot accept to separate children from parents. This is unacceptable. This is totally against the values of Western culture and Western civilization. And by the way, this is not an European problem. Sometimes they think this is the crisis of Europe. No, if you look at Brexit, if you look at Trump, this means that it's not the crisis of Europe. This is a crisis of the Western civilization. And I say that, Western civilization, in a very, very, I'd say, strong manner, because this means that I believe, I fully believe, that the cooperation between America and Europe is crucial to be the driving force of all the world, in the sense that we want democracies, but liberal democracies. We don't want the dictatorship of majority. Even when they say, but they have majority, okay, but if the majority decides to kill half of the population or 1/3 of the population because they are not Christians or because they are not from our ethnic group, this is democratic in the sense that it's the majority that wants. But it's totally undemocratic because this is killing our values. Because the essence of democracy is not the majority vote, is the human rights issue. We have the right to vote because it is a human right. It's not the other way around. So you cannot do everything that you want. And so we have to have this stance. If we have this, I'm sure that at the end, of the day. The electorate will acknowledge this.
Paulo Rangel, thank you so much.